Okay, so before we move on this very basic introduction to Git, I want to make you aware of a scenario that could possibly happen to you and give you a solution for it before we get deep into how Git actually works. So the scenario is this. You're working through a video, you're looking at my source code, you accidentally type in something in my source code, and then I say, now take a look at this other branch, this solution branch, and you attempt to switch branches and you get an error from Git. My video keeps going on, but you are stopped because you get an error that says you have to decide what you want to do with this change. So I'm going to show you what options you have in that scenario so you can move forward. And let's just talk about changes at a high level in Git. Every file in your working directory in that my first repo directory now is either going to be tracked or untracked. Now, since you pulled it from GitHub, every file is tracked. But let's suppose you add a new file. At that point, it's untracked. But once you tell Git that you want to start tracking the changes for a file, it will never forget about that file. And so from that point on, it will keep a watchful eye on that file. If you make a change to that file, it's going to expect you to commit that change so that you can share it with other people. So a commit is basically just one or more changes that you make to one or more files, and you intend to share those changes with other developers, or at least push them and save them as permanent changes into your repository. Now, you may have reasons why you don't want to commit a change. Like, for example, you were just following along, you're just messing around in the code, you didn't realize I was going to tell you to switch branches, and now you want to move on to a new branch, and you didn't even intend to save all that work, but Git won't let you move out of that branch. What do you do in that particular case? Well, just because Git expects you to make a commit, you don't have to. You don't have to share your changes with others, in other words. You can either do one of two things. You can either stash the changes, or you can reset the changes, which basically deletes them permanently. So I'm going to show you both of those, and then I'm going to finally show you how to do a commit in case you do want to save those changes, even if you don't intend to push them up to a repo in the future. And I know a lot of this is foreign. All you really need to know is that if you make a change and you try to switch your branches, it's going to say you need to commit this. You can either commit it, you can abandon it, or you can stash it in hopes of using it later. So let's go through that scenario and you'll get a better idea of what we're talking about. All right, so let's start out with the Git status. Okay, so there's nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. Great, that's a good start. So now let's open up Visual Studio Code. I already had it open. I just clicked on it in the taskbar. And here I'm in the master branch. You can see that I'm in the master branch from here in our Git status. Now I accidentally make a change. I accidentally make a change, all right? And I even save that change. And then I minimize Visual Studio Code and I go back over here, and now I want to switch to the solution branch. So I'm going to do git checkout solution, and notice that it gives me an error. Your local changes to the following files would be overwritten by a checkout. So changes you made to the hello.txt file would be overwritten if you were to check out. In other words, you're going to lose those changes. And again, Git will not let you lose those changes without a fight. Okay, so please either commit your changes or stash them before you switch the branches. And then it says it's aborting this. So if we do a git status, it abandoned our attempt to switch branches. Now when we do a git status, it shows that our hello.txt file has been modified. So it puts it in red, which is kind of like danger zone, right? You got to decide what you're going to do with this. So you can do one of several things. The first thing is to do a stash. And the stash says, I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to say that these are my final changes that I want to make save in this branch, or save in a commit that this branch points to is the more proper way of saying it. So I want to take those changes and temporarily just put them in my pocket. and I'll come back to them later maybe. All right. So that's what we're going to do first. We'll just do this, git stash. All right. And so it saved the working directory and index state on master for this specific commit. All right. So don't worry about any of that. We'll talk about all that later. But the key here is that now I can go git checkout solution, and it allows me to do that. Okay. Really cool. Now, let's say I'm working here in this branch, and I'm like, you know what? I need to go back because I want to get back to those changes that I made. All right. So here I'm going to do a git checkout master. All right. And so that will show me the current state of master, which was the original state. And I'll say, you know what? I want to get back to those changes that I was making. So I'm going to pop them. In other words, I put something in, I'm going to pop it back out. So I'm going to do git stash pop. All right. And so it took the changes and put them back out, and it put our file back into a modified state. And you'll see I accidentally made a change. All right. It's back. So that's the first option. You can do a stash, and then when you get ready at some future point in time to revisit those changes, if ever, then you can do a pop. So git stash pop. Okay, that's your first option. The other one is, hey, I really don't care about this change. I don't want this change. I want to abandon this change. In that case, what you'll need to do is to do a git reset -- hard. I don't want to explain what the hard means right now. Just memorize that line or use a cheat sheet. Hard will basically say, go back to the way it originally was, no matter what. Okay, and so now if we go back in Visual Studio Code, you can see we lost our change, and now it's gone forever. All right, we abandoned it completely. So let's make another change here, and this time I'm going to commit the change. So this is a good change that I want to keep and even allow others to see someday. All right, I'm going to save that, Control S on my keyboard. I'll minimize this. First thing I'm going to do is a git status. All right, and I really don't want you to do this necessarily for now because I don't want to explain everything behind the scenes, but these two git commands will create a commit, and then you can move on and change from there. So let's do git add. So I'm basically saying, hey, add all of these changes to this staging area. All right. There's a 2-phase commit process, and this is the first phase of the commit. These are the candidates for the commit. So git add every file, every change. That's what the dot means. I could specify a specific file or even a specific change. Not going to do that. All right. So now everything is in a staged area. If I do a git status at this point, you can see that the text, it's still modified, but it's green, which means we're kind of in the safe zone now. All right. In a sense. And then I'm going to say, okay, everything that's staged, I'm going to commit it. So this is how you do a commit. Git commit, and you want to add a message. So -m, and then in double quotes, just a change. You can put anything you want here, and we'll talk about messages and git commits later on, but that should do it. The change is made, git status, nothing to commit. Wait, where'd all my changes go? No, they're in there. We just made a commit, and it is now kind of stored, and it's now a permanent part of the file on this branch. Okay. So even if we tried to reset the head, we wouldn't lose it. It would be here, and this change would never be lost. So those are 3 ways that you can get out of that sticky situation that I just talked about, where you've made a change accidentally, and you can either stash it, reset it, or abandon it, or commit it. Okay. So we'll talk about all those as we get deeper into Git a little bit later, but that should be good for now.